Welcome, everybody, to The Next Chair. I'm your host, Blair Taylor. This is a podcast series that's all about leadership. Where are we with leadership? There's a bunch of questions in that loaded question. We want to know where we are as a nation. We're diving into that with some great leaders in this series, and we have no exception to that today. We have an incredible leader here. Dean Lietz is with us from the Watts Colleges at ASU. She's a very special guest. I couldn't be more excited to have her here with us today. She's one of the remarkable leaders who's at ASU. Dean Lietz is the Vice Provost, Dean and President's Professor of the Watts Colleges of Public Service and Community Solution. That means she's sitting in a whole lot of leadership chairs, is what that means. And I am thrilled to have her. The Watts Colleges, I'm going to ask her to give you a little bit more information, but it's got a bunch of different components. And I will ask the dean to explain what those are, just so that we know the extensive portfolio that she sits over. Dean Lietz, I want to welcome you to the podcast. I am excited to have this conversation with you. And it's really a way of helping to launch this podcast. You have been a tremendous supporter of this. And you are an incredible leader in and of your own right. So thank you for being here. Can we start by just talking about a little bit about the Watts Colleges, if you don't mind, just briefly giving us an introduction to the multiple arms of this incredible part of ASU?
Yeah, first of all, let me just say thank you, Blair. I mean, to be included in this conversation means a ton to me. As you know, I have a tremendous respect for you and
Thank
your leadership across multiple sectors. It's one of the reasons why we're interested in having you join us here at Arizona State University. And so to have this conversation is really an honor. So the Watts College of Public Service and Community Solutions is one of 19 academic units here at Arizona State University. So we're not the largest college here at ASU, nor are we the smallest. But what we are is the largest comprehensive college of public service across the nation, highly ranked with undergraduate, graduate, and doctoral degrees across 4 schools. So we have a School of Social Work, which is my tenure home. We have a School of Public Affairs that focuses on administration and public policy. We have a School of Criminology and Criminal Justice, and then a School of Community Resources and Development that has a whole host of degrees, things like sustainable tourism, parks and recreation, community sports, nonprofit leadership and management, and a few other things. And so bottom line, we will serve over 8,000 students this year, whether they're studying
Wow.
here in Phoenix, whether they're in our program in Hainan, China, whether they're studying 100% online through these undergraduate and graduate degrees. But the thread that really, I think, brings our students together and makes them say yes to a college of public service is that they want to do the thing you're talking about. They want to lead. Like
Yeah.
they're coming to college or they're coming back, by the way, for a professional master's degree, for example, because they see social problems, they see concerns in their local communities. And instead of sort of whining or complaining about those things, they want to be part of the solution. And they want
Yeah.
to learn how to do that. They want to be able to learn how to lead effectively. And that is what we're here to do.
You know, I have to tell you, and you know this on a personal level, I've seen it up close and personal because I'm an adjunct professor in the Watts Colleges, and it is a phenomenal group of students and quite an agenda and a vision for how that is advancing the next generation of leaders. So thank you for all of your leadership in that. It's been an incredible experience for me to be up close and personal to that as well. But speaking of leadership, I want to just dive in if we can. And I want to
Do it.
start with just a personal question for you. And this is one I'm going to ask to the guests who come on this program with me. What's the best leadership advice that you've ever had or you've ever received?
I can remember early in my leadership career that to be perfectly honest, Blair, I had some doubts
Hmm.
about whether I was what ASU needed, whether I had the skill or talent to lead in the way that I was envisioning was supposed to happen in higher education. All right. And
Mm-hmm.
so, one of the best pieces of advice that I received back, this is probably about 8 to 10 years ago, was that not everybody needs to lead the same. In other words, we need a variety of leadership styles. And more important that there's one way that's right, is that being genuine and authentic to who you are
Mm,
is what people trust. And so, for example, we have an incredible dynamic president. President Michael Crow has transformed this university. I started here at ASU a year after he came, and I have watched this university literally grow and develop and evolve in amazing ways under his leadership. But you know Michael Blair.
I do.
So, but I'm not
He's
Michael,
incredible.
and
Yeah,
I'm not Michael, right?
right. Neither am
But
I.
right? But guess what? Michael's actually not Blair or Cynthia either,
Right,
right?
right.
So no critique of an incredible leadership style that's effective for him because you know what? Because it's him, Blair. Because
Hmm.
he believes in what he's doing, he drives things forward, and he does things in a way that works because people trust it because they understand why he's doing what he's doing. Well, if I tried to be Michael Crow, Blair,
Right.
how well would that go for me?
I don't know.
Not good.
That,
People would be like, "What is she doing right now?" Right?
right,
But I
right.
gotta be me.
Yeah,
But I'm
yeah.
still leading. I'm still driving things forward, but in a way that is authentic to me as a human being. And
Hmm.
that's what people trust. They don't trust one style. They trust authenticity. They trust values, mission-driven leadership. They trust transparency, data, clear communication. But again, the how of that can look different.
Yeah, that's such a great sage advice, especially the part about not trying to be Michael Crow, okay? Because
Yeah.
Michael is one of a kind. He is one of the most dynamic leaders that you and I have ever met, and certainly a visionary. But there's one of a kind means one of a kind, okay? Like I agree with you. It's not something that we need to emulate. We need to be ourselves, and the authenticity part is just an incredible piece of advice. So thank you for that. And speaking of advice about leadership, one of the things I'm really interested in, Cynthia, is just trying to make this program, this broadcast, as dynamic and relevant and impactful as we can. What's your best advice to me and to our guests that we'll have on in the future about how to do that, especially when we're talking about the next generation?
Yeah, it's super interesting that conversations about the current generation coming into college. You know what's funny, Blair? I don't know if you know this, they're really interested in podcasts. Did you know that?
I did know that.
I'm
Yes.
just guessing that that
Yeah,
might
I
have been
did
part
know
of
that.
your precipitant for doing this.
I figured that one out. Yeah.
So as they're spending a lot of time like interacting with, well, you can't quite see my phone. I'm trying to hold up my cell phone right now, by the
Yeah.
way, but they're spending a lot of time and have for years interacting through a cell phone. I think they're longing for dialogue like this. All right.
Yeah.
So why are podcasts now sort of getting a resurgence? Because hearing people sort of like talk things through, interact with each other. Even the fact that you're choosing to use a video format, like they're seeing us head nod and smile at each other and question each other. And
Yep.
that people are longing for interaction and they're longing to be a part of that interaction. And even in a podcast, you feel like you're if you're doing it right, which by the way, I can already tell you got this down. People should feel like they're sitting on a living room couch with you and me
Yep.
and that we're having a conversation about something that matters to them. So first of all, it's the format, it's the discussion, it's the I would say authenticity. But the second key, and I think you got this down too, is the topic needs to be urgent and of interest.
Yeah.
Our attention
For
spans,
sure.
I'm going to say, they're not just young people coming out of the pandemic. My attention span
Yeah.
is not. Is yours, Blair? Is yours the same?
Some of us have seen it fade a little bit. Yeah, I got you.
So we got to have topics that are also on people's minds, and leadership is
Yeah.
one of them.
Yeah. Really appreciate that. Another great piece of advice. I know you've dedicated so much of your life and career to developing great leaders. And I have too. And that's not an easy task. But I'm wondering, just from your personal perspective, Cynthia, why is this topic so important to you? Is there a story behind that? And why is it, in a bigger picture, sort of a secondary question, why is it so important to this nation right now? Why is this topic of leadership germane to you personally? And then what's it all about with respect to the nation writ large?
Yeah, some people come into leadership where they have a clear pathway and they say, I want to have this job, move to this job, move to this job. And that's spectacular. Like being intentional with your career, having goals, driving your choices that direction is an excellent way to approach your future. And yet there's some of us for whom that's not exactly how we landed here.
Hmm.
So I went to college wanting to make a difference. Leadership wasn't necessarily even a word that I was using at that point, but I definitely had a heart and still do for our community.
Mm,
I chose psychology as my major, and psychology served me well. But I did find that it was giving me a lot more theory and not enough actual practical skills on how to help. So I
mm,
tripped into what then became my field. It was my senior year. It was actually a psychology advisor who suggested that I take a social work class. Now, Blair, you're gonna be surprised by this, but was like sat in the front row taking notes. It's like the first day of class. Back then, you handed a like hard copy of the syllabi out in class, right?
hmm.
And I'm so jazzed on day one about what I'm hearing in my social work course that I'm taking notes on my syllabus. Now, you're not surprised to know I'm just a little bit on the geeky side.
Mm.
But I finally was like hearing the thing I wanted to hear. And then that caused me then to finish with a minor, but my major in psychology, minor in business, and then social work, and then go directly to get an MSW at Jane Addams College of Social Work in Chicago.
Mm.
And my plan was just to work with the community and make a difference. So here's what shifted for me. I work directly with children, youth, and families involved in the public child welfare system in Illinois and then here in Arizona when we moved out here for a little over 10 years. And I ended up finding myself a bit dismayed with a field that I love. So, look,
Mm.
I saw social workers doing incredibly impactful, meaningful work. But, Blair,
Hmm.
I also saw some folks who were not adequately prepared to serve our most vulnerable community members. And I'm going to be honest with you, I also saw some unethical practice too. So the
Okay.
second group, well meaning people, good hearts, but they just didn't have the skills they needed.
Hmm.
But the third group, I would argue, were doing harm.
Yeah.
And so I was getting really bothered by it. And I was sort of like, complaining about somebody needs to do something. Somebody needs to do something. It's been about a year, like kind of bemoaning this. And then finally I was like, well, maybe I should do something about this. I'm 10 years into my career. So
Hmm.
that caused me to come back and get a PhD in social work with the
Hmm.
distinct plan to do clinical research that would better equip social workers with evidence-based practices
Hmm.
and to teach in a way that would better prepare the next generation of social servants. So my sort of what I was seeing in society, my heart to make a difference, and then yet seeing it wasn't happening the way I expected it to, it wasn't happening the way I thought it should. And I just felt sort of this urge to step up and step in. So I don't want to spend the whole time about me, but this same thing happened to me. I would say there were about four other pivotal points in my career. I wasn't planning on being dean, for example, my current role. But we were in a pandemic and our dean got an incredible job as a president at Montclair State University. I was working directly under President Jonathan Copel as vice dean at that point.
Hmm.
People were saying, Cynthia, you're going to be the next dean. I'm like, no, no, no. We need an external candidate. We need something new. But we were in a pandemic. And actually, Blair, what happened was we needed somebody who knew ASU, who knew our students, who knew how things worked. And so it wasn't my plan. And yet I was the right person in the moment. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think there's two pathways to leadership. Like there are these, I have goals and I'm driving to them, and I love that. I have no problem with that. But it's also okay that leadership is the willingness to say yes when the
Hmm.
moment presents itself.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That's fantastic. And I love so many components of that. I love the last part about when the opportunity presents itself and be ready, right? You got to be ready when that moment presents itself, which means you need to be preparing for that moment. But I also love the whole notion of jumping in, right? Just you took some leaps in there, and leaps of faith are important. Do you feel like we have a leadership cohort that is being groomed and ready today that has that sort of dynamism is going to jump in to solve some of these major issues that we face? I mean, what's your assessment of both the capability and the readiness and also the need?
So 100% I do. And here's why I can speak about that with confidence. I'm teaching every Tuesday, Thursday afternoon, Introduction to Social Work class, which is students who are just starting their undergraduate degree, and yet they're coming with this fervor to step up in the very way that I'm talking about. So look, to your listeners, it's not going to come as a surprise that you and I see that there's some complications in our world right now.
Yeah.
We've got a polarized democracy within our nation, that we've got global conflict happening at a level that we've not seen in a long time.
Hmm.
Some people are feeling like the world is on fire and are, understandably, frankly, sort of experience a sense of discouragement or disillusionment. Why I feel so hopeful about our future is that this moment, at least I am seeing this generation being spurred on by this moment. Like we got to do something. Like
Yeah.
what is happening to this nation that we love?
Yeah.
And get by the way, we're okay with being different. Like we're okay that we are on different parts of the aisle. I can be friends with a Republican, I can be friends with a Democrat, I can be an independent and sort of have friends on both ends of the aisle. And we actually go out on Friday night and have a good time together. And by the way,
Yeah.
sometimes Saturday morning we wake up and we debate some interesting topic and we have a good time doing it and we learn from each other. So I think frankly they're bothered by the inability for civil discourse and the growth and learning that has really been a cornerstone of our democracy. We've gotten a little bit off track, I would argue. And I think this generation is saying we want to do better, not just get
Hmm.
back on track, but actually let's just do better. Let's actually evolve as a democracy. We have yet to realize the dreams of this country. So let's make it happen. And so I see this group much more open, very motivated. And what they're trying to figure out is what we're here to teach them then, the skills, like the how of doing it. But the
Yeah.
heart, I see the heart. And I'm curious about you, Blair. Like, so you're teaching, you're interacting with students. Are you seeing some of what I'm seeing too?
I am. I am. I'm actually bullish on this next generation. I think, to be blunt, our generation is leaving them with a whole bunch of problems. There's
Yep.
just no other way to describe that in
Yep.
in nice terms, right? And so I think they have a new and creative way of doing things. I love the way you described it. Okay, being different. Um, the question is, and it's a bigger question, have we taught them the lessons, the fundamental foundational lessons of leadership? Because there's some that are intergenerational, right? Like, I mean, there's some things that change and there's some things that you kind of still have to do to be an effective leader. And the question is, and again, this is the onus and burden was on us and still is, have we done what we needed to do to prepare them? So I'd love to just get your thoughts as a last question of where have the gaps been for us? Like, have we mentored the right way? Have we done the things that you did when you turned around and jumped in and said, okay, it's on me. I've got to be, as opposed to, I think what in some ways our generation got consumed by was this notion of, I'm going to get mine. And in some ways it became more about us individually than the collective. I'd love to get your opinion about that, just as a last thought. I think we can agree on this coming generation and a hope and prospects. Let's talk for a minute about ours, and because leadership is intergenerational.
Such an important question and a hard one right at the end there, Blair.
Yeah.
I think there's many things that created the moment we're in, but one of them is that I think we stopped listening. So yes, you're talking a little bit about a selfishness or a self-centeredness, but
Yep.
it's also a digging in on our perspective that I
Yeah.
think drove a lot of this sort of moving apart. And we started talking at and arguing before listening.
Yeah.
So my research, one of the things I focus on is empathy. And empathy is actually a neuroscientific concept. People think empathy is being nice or it's compassion. It actually isn't. Empathy is the ability to accurately understand the position of another.
Yeah.
And that's actually a process that happens. Our brain fires. We have mirroring behaviors. Think about like when you see ducks following ducks or when you see a baby mirroring their caregiver. So that's actually a biological process that happens for us, and it's the first step of empathy, but it is
Hmm.
insufficient. So first we mirror one another, but then there is a cognitive flexibility that's required that we can think outside of our own perspective. And then there's an emotional regulation that's required that allows us, before we react, to hear first. And then empathy that starts with mirroring, cognitive flexibility, emotion regulation should lead to action. So I think we're missing the two middle things, the
Interesting.
emotion regulation and the cognitive flexibility. And so your question is, how do we teach this next generation? Have we done? I don't think we've done it yet.
Yeah.
But I would argue that we have to be very intentional about our skills, about how we lead with listening first. Because if
Yeah.
we don't understand, we can't even argue effectively. Like, if you know that,
Right.
even if you want to win an argument, by the way, you should understand the point of the other person first.
Imagine that. Yes.
But I hope we're not leading with why I want to win. I hope
Yeah.
we're leading with I want to make things better.
Yeah.
And so understanding's essentially for that. And then the last thing I'll say to your question, so are we giving them what they need? I would also argue that we need to learn from them. There's
Mm,
a lot of listening that we could be doing with this
mm.
generation. They have a
Great point.
lot to say to us.
Great point.
And I would love to see us, before we sort of talk about imparting knowledge and what we got to teach them, yes, but also learning is reciprocal.
Yeah.
And hearing what they are bringing to the table, I think, is essential to our ability to move forward.
Dean Lietz, we could continue this conversation for days, and I
Yes,
would
we
be
could.
very happy to do that. Unfortunately, I know there are other things that are calling. So I would just want to thank you so much for being a guest on this program, and thank you for the work you're doing. Really appreciate it, and keep at it because it's necessary. So great to have you. Thanks.
And thank you, Blair, for this program. I think you're advancing a conversation that is timely and important. And any way we can be helpful, let us know.
Appreciate you. Take care. Have a great rest of your day.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right.